Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Marketing Live for Friday, April 27th, 2018. I'm your host, Rob Zink, and I serve as Associate Vice President for Marketing at Indiana University, where fortunately spring has finally sprung. It's a gorgeous day in Bloomington, Indiana, and we hope it will be just as beautiful about a week from right now when the first of our commencement ceremonies happen. Today on Marketing Live, we're going to keep it inside the state of Indiana, and I'm excited to have guests from the University of Notre Dame to discuss communicating the value proposition of a liberal arts education. But before I introduce them, a reminder that Marketing Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. You can be a part of our live broadcast today with your comments and your questions, so feel free to join the conversation using the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. That's Higher Ed Live, the hashtag on Twitter. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first marketing agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. No matter the size of your institution, digital enrollment marketing and communications comes with challenges. Wouldn't it be great if there was one tool that could help you navigate all of these challenges? Be sure to register for M. Stoner's free webinar, Map It Out, the Path to Digital Engagement with Prospects. During this webinar coming up on May 16th, M. Stoner's content strategist will uncover 7 ways an experience map can improve engagement with prospective students. We will be tweeting out a link shortly with all the registration information and additional details. Okay, I am delighted to welcome our guest today. First, Kate Gary. Kate is Communications and Marketing Director for the College of Arts and Letters at the University of Notre Dame. Kate's extensive background spans 2 decades in journalism, media relations, and strategic communications, and includes not just higher education, but also the government and nonprofit sectors. Kate, thanks so much for joining today.
Oh, thanks so much for the invite.
And next, Josh Weinhold. Josh is Assistant Communications Director for Notre Dame's College of Arts and Letters. Josh's responsibilities include overseeing news, social media, and undergraduate enrollment, recruitment, and engagement for the college. He also brings a journalism background, having previously covered politics and the legal system for newspapers in Indiana and Chicago. Josh, great to connect with you as well.
Thanks, happy to be here.
So first, let's get to know both of you a bit better before we start talking liberal arts. And as we just heard, you both bring interesting backgrounds to your role at Notre Dame. So I'll ask if there is something that you could point to as part of your professional journey that has stuck with you or still influences you in the work that you currently do. So Kate, I'll ask you to kick us off.
So Josh and I both have extensive journalism backgrounds, and I think that really guides our approach to the work that we do. We're very much about storytelling and content first, and building off of that storytelling background that we have as journalists.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I mean, I think when you come from especially newspapers in the modern era, you're used to having to do everything yourself, that you're not going to get outside help. You get experience doing a lot of different things. And then the other thing too that's just been fun is that in college I was a journalism and humanities major and loved the liberal arts and thought I'd always like to be back in the higher education world again, but didn't know exactly what that role would look like. So being able to use content skills I developed for my journalism career to showcase the value of a liberal arts education has been a dream so far.
And I'm sure both of you, as you said, have the chance to do it all in your current roles there. So in terms of setting context, and we can get into this more as we talk through your college's brand, but give us a sense of what your team looks like there and the staff that you rely on.
Okay, so our office for the college communications is a 7-person team. There's myself and Josh. We also have a full-time video producer, a full-time graphic designer, a full-time web content strategist, a full-time writer, and then we have a part-time admin. But we don't have budget for outside marketing firms. So we do all of our work in-house, and we partner with enrollment admissions people at the university. So as part of one of several colleges within the University of Notre Dame, we do interact with prospective students, but we're not the first contact they have with Notre Dame. So we try to build off of the Notre Dame story that admissions is telling overall about the university, and then what's special about liberal arts within Notre Dame.
Okay, and I'm sure that lots of listeners are familiar with your institution, and you mentioned the Notre Dame story, and you being communications leaders at the college level, could you give us an overview of the College of Arts and Letters at Notre Dame and its breadth and its depth, and what are we talking about in terms of enrollment there?
Yeah, and that's an important question because it's a tricky thing to understand sometimes. Arts and Letters at Notre Dame includes the arts, humanities, and social sciences. So the hard sciences aren't a part of our college. There's a separate College of Science that incorporates that. And one of the things that's unique about Notre Dame is its emphasis on an unparalleled undergraduate education. And that's something that's essential at the university level, but especially at the college level too, and something that we try to emphasize in our work as part of that Notre Dame story that Kate mentioned, that in our communications with undergraduates, they know that no matter what they study here, they're going to be getting a top-notch education. And our goal is to show why the arts, humanities, and social sciences are particularly engaging and elite here.
Yeah, but there are other liberal arts colleges, other universities where there is a College of Arts and Sciences. So it's a little bit different here in College of Arts and Letters. But we have 20 academic departments, everything from economics to music to philosophy. And so there's a lot, speaking of breadth, there's a lot of ground to cover there. And as we start to build beyond the college story and talk about department-specific outcomes and department-specific versions of that pitch, we have to do everything in addition to those 20 departments. There are multiple majors within some of those departments. So it's a lot of breadth, which is challenging but fun.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. The complexities of higher ed. And the fun that comes along with that. So the overarching challenge, and again, as you mentioned, whether your situation could be different, you could be at the academic unit level, as the two of you are. You could be perhaps at a liberal arts institution, but that overarching challenge, I think, is well known in that these foundational skills have never been more important. They've never been more relevant than right now. Yet the liberal arts can get a bad rap. So give us a sense of the situation at Notre Dame. I'm really excited and interested to hear about your story and the work that you've done. So let's preface that and get a sense of the situation that you both began with before undertaking this process.
Yeah, so I'm sure, like a lot of liberal arts communicators, the crash of 2008 and 2009 was a bit disastrous. That was kind of a focal point where the national conversation and prospective students and their parents started to really openly question the value of the liberal arts, especially at a place like Notre Dame, where the sticker price is pretty high. We increasingly saw people wanting that certainty to know what was going to happen at the other end. And so for a lot of folks, it might seem like business or science or engineering, all of which are at Notre Dame and have extremely top-notch programs, seem like a guarantee because you know exactly what the job is going to look like once you come out after 4 years. And the challenge for us then was to both figure out what our outcome story looked like and what the story we had to tell there was, but then also how to effectively communicate that to students and parents and even current students and alumni about what the value of their education was and how that was capably preparing them for the future. So it predates both of us a little bit, but immediately after the crash, there was kind of a throw everything at the wall approach here, really focused on corporate or business type outcomes. And then once we had a chance to catch our breath and kind of step back a little bit is when we thought, longer and deeper about the range of exciting outcomes that were available to students who study the liberal arts.
Yeah, we had a tagline that was something like a smart investment for life. And we were really pushing that investment language, which I think was maybe too far in that direction. So the crash definitely caused a lot more questions, but I think it also dovetailed with this sort of more involved style of parenting, some helicopter parenting, some people might call it, where parents are much more involved in that college decision and even all the way through. And so they're asking a lot of hard questions early on that students might not necessarily have asked And so with the liberal arts, the big challenge is that there isn't that one-to-one correlation. So I'm not going to major in aerospace engineering and then I'm going to go be an aerospace engineer, but you could do anything, which is sort of the point, that this broad skill set that it is so versatile and portable in a time when new jobs are being created all the time, jobs that our students might be filling when they graduate in 3 or 4 years might not even exist yet. And so it is actually so valuable, this broad skill set that the liberal arts develop, but because there isn't that obvious one-to-one correlation, it's harder for people to see in their minds what they might be able to do with a degree in art history or German or sociology, something like that.
We've also at Indiana University gone through a strategic brand positioning process with our College of Arts and Sciences here. And one of the things that predated that, we have an in-house full service marketing agency, and our group was working on essentially a view book type of piece, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and more content, and it really brought to light the issue and the need to step back and really determine, okay, what at the core, the essence, what is here that can be threaded through everything. So we have lots of folks who love to tell that brochure story, where it all started.
Yeah.
So I also want to ask too, we've already used that term multiple times here, liberal arts, and you get great clarification about the College of Arts and Letters at Notre Dame, but certainly the word liberal can be interpreted too politically, and perhaps arts is seen as something that doesn't necessarily resonate when you talk about outcomes or talk about jobs. So putting those two together, as Gallup's Brandon Bastide has said, is a branding disaster. So how have you addressed any negative connotations just with the terminology itself?
It's a tricky question, and it's one we've thought about, but it's not one we've arrived at a perfect answer about. We have inherited that liberal arts term from generations before us, and it's something people are used to, but we definitely recognize that our prospective students and their parents and other audiences might not necessarily have a full understanding of what that means. So kind of like we said at the outset, I mean, when space allows, we like to say arts, humanities, and social sciences to try to give people a better understanding of what, all falls under our umbrella. I mean, Notre Dame has one of the best undergraduate business schools in the country, but the economics department is in arts and letters. So showcasing to people that it may not be exactly what they think right away by at least stating that the social sciences are part of our college has been something we've tried to do more of. But, even in an age of 280 character counts on Twitter, I mean, liberal arts is still kind of a nice, succinct way to say what this education is. But until someone comes up with a better term, we haven't found that yet. So it's a tough question.
Right. And I think you want to be cautious about overreacting to something that's out there in the political environment that right now, like, I don't know that I would necessarily overhaul all of our publications and all of the terminology we are using, but it's definitely something we've been having more serious conversations about as we see that polling data come out.
So let's talk about the process that you were undertaking at Notre Dame, and to start with the audience, your target audience, and any market research that you may have done, whether that was primary, secondary, anything to get a better understanding of your audiences or their perceptions. How did any sort of research fit into this overall process?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, when we're talking about branding the value of the liberal arts, prospective students and their parents are our primary audience. But throughout our process, and something that I think is really important to emphasize, is to not lose sight of current students and alumni too, and the importance of trying to get that value proposition message to them. Because especially at a place like Notre Dame with so many diverse academic colleges, we find current students, even once we've gotten them in the door, may not necessarily know how to confidently articulate the value of what they're studying. And they see their friends in business and engineering get swooped up in hiring sprees early on in their senior year. And we need to make sure that if they're studying history or philosophy, they know how to articulate why they're doing what they're doing and how those skills they're developing are going to set them up for success in the future. And the same thing for alumni who may have are 10 years out or so and forgetting exactly why they went to Notre Dame and have student loans still or something like that. But to understand the flexibility and the portability of the skills they developed here and how important that is. So, you know, like Kate said, all our work is done in-house. Our team is very talented, but the investments have been made in staff and not necessarily in budget for outside expenditures. So we weren't able to do a lot of market research in terms of positioning ourselves amongst our peers other than what we could do on our own. But what we really did pay attention to was national data about the value of the liberal arts, both the skills that employers find liberal arts majors developing and the value of those skills, most importantly. Because if the national impression was that the skills or the liberal arts themselves weren't valuable, that's not what data from employers were saying. They were saying they wanted critical thinking, public speaking, strong writing, teamwork, interpersonal communication, those types of things. And we know for a fact that the liberal arts, any program within that develops that. And so that's kind of what our research process involved, was understanding how we could frame the liberal arts in a context that was beneficial to those key audiences.
Yeah, and I think in addition to looking at all the data that we could find nationally about the liberal arts and different survey data with employers, we really worked closely with our partners across campus. So having meetings and focus groups with people on the front lines and admissions, and what kinds of questions are you getting from students and parents, and what are you hearing, and what are you seeing from other schools, talking with our advisors, talking with our first year of studies, which is the advisors that work with first year students at Notre Dame as they're in that discernment process, talking with our career center and the people that are helping the arts and letters students work through their resume, work through their job search process, work through their discernment, talking to employers. We talked to Career Center about talking with employers, but we also spoke to some employers that come to campus and hire Notre Dame liberal arts students as well. And we also did some focus groups with students here on campus to hear what they're hearing from their friends, what they thought of our materials, what they thought of our newer materials, what focusing in on what are some of these misperceptions, what are the core questions that we need to answer. And that helped us also develop our materials. And then the other piece of research that we did is our Office of Institutional Research and our Career Center worked together to do this first destinations report. So it is just looking at 6 months out, where are the students from all across Notre Dame, where are they ending up? And so we were able to dive into that data and look at that, and that showed us what we thought, which was that students, no matter what their major, were having really interesting outcomes, great jobs at good places, going to outstanding grad schools, and that there wasn't a clear line. You could go from almost any major in the arts and letters to almost any career. And so we built on some data and research that the university was already doing there. What we don't have is that same kind of research beyond 6 months out, which is what I would love to see. But working with what we had, and then doing a lot of sort of focus groups on our own.
And I'm curious, were there any other misperceptions? I'm sure the one that you mentioned in terms of outcomes was probably on there somewhere, but any other misperceptions that surfaced that may be interesting, or perhaps ones that you didn't necessarily expect to see?
Well, one interesting thing that kind of ties back to previous efforts that our office had to do this is faculty resistance to talking about this. Some who think it's untoward to talk about the outcomes value of the liberal arts, that we study these things for their intrinsic value. We definitely had to work to get buy-in across the college. We have a very supportive dean, but who believes in both communications efforts and telling that outcome story. But in terms of getting that buy-in across the college to show why talking about outcomes is important beyond just we're studying history because we love history.
And I think that we just work that into our outcome storytelling as we do it, that it enhances your life in a lot of unexpected ways, not necessarily just helping you get a great job and helping you advance in your career, but making sure that we're remembering to tell that piece of the story and finding a nice balance there.
And I also want to circle back, because I think it's such great information, to your previous points. And Josh, you touched on students and being thinking of current students and how they might be comparing to students in other majors, and Kate talking about really being connected with the front lines of your college. And so even here, working with our school-based college-based marketing colleagues, which I love to do, and I always appreciate to see how closely connected they are with the students, with the touch points, with the brand experience, if you will. And I'm interested, are there any other ways that you intentionally go about trying to stay connected with students or truly understand the experiences that they're having?
Well, I think that our content operation throughout the year, in addition to sort of the marketing pieces that we do, help us do that. So we are always looking for and writing stories about outstanding students and their experiences and the way that they're really taking advantage of the Notre Dame liberal arts education, whether that's through undergraduate research, experiences abroad, internships, tying that all back together. And so as we tell those great stories on a day-to-day basis, then that helps us infuse our marketing pieces too. Yeah. So it's all tied together. I think we get back to what we talked about at the very beginning is we're storytellers first. We're a very content first operation. And so I think that shows through in all the things that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo that. I mean, for all the effort we put into our new view book, I mean, we recognize that only prospective students are going to be seeing that. So the storytelling we do, feature stories, and we can talk more about this in terms of strategy, but kind of this invisible thesis we have running through a lot of our storytelling now, emphasizing the benefits of the liberal arts, both while students are here and then in the long term, has really helped us. And you know, we certainly those stories live on our website and on social media, but what we've really doubled down lately is e-newsletters, because we recognized actually we had more student engagement with quarterly newsletters we were sending out that contain these types of stories, that open rates and click-through rates that were far above the industry average. So we've doubled down now on that as a way to reach directly to students, recognizing that's the way to get the content in front of them that has this reassuring message that can help them articulate the value of the liberal arts.
Yeah. And I think Josh talked about sort of the invisible thesis, but we've gotten pretty far into this discussion without saying study everything, do anything, which is the sort of branding tagline that we arrived at. And that's sort of the invisible thesis that's going through all of the work that we do.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I know we were going to get there. So how did you arrive at that? What was the process, and how did you align on that as the strategy, and that is the that North Star that would guide everything else?
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things about what we went through was that we had this problem, which was we knew we had to showcase the value of the liberal arts and tell that outcome story effectively. And we were in the midst of a website redesign, and we had a view book that was a little old. We weren't quite ready to refresh it yet. So we knew we were going to design this one brochure that was going to then have some matching web content that was going to both tell the outcome story, but also be a little bit of a general showcase as your primary marketing piece might have. And so we set out to drill into this outcomes data we have had from the First Destinations report to see what story we could tell using numbers, but then we were also hoping to incorporate some alumni testimonials and that national data from employers that we talked about. But we had a strategic communications plan that this kind of fed into, but nowhere in our strategic communications plan was a branding campaign or coming up with a tagline. It wasn't mentioned at all. That wasn't something we set out to do. That only resulted as we thought really deeply about this message we needed to send. And as I was coming up with ideas for titles for this brochure, we had a long list, and Study Everything, Do Anything kind of popped out at us because it really did capture the message we wanted to send and helped us spin some of those difficult, tricky questions into positives. The fact that students come in not necessarily knowing what they want to do, or not even necessarily knowing what they want to study. Or, they have an issue they're passionate about, and then along the way they find 2 majors and a minor, or, other different academic programs that combine well to help them, tackle this issue, whether it's global health or sustainability or something like that. But then also that there's not a one-to-one correlation between what you study and what you're going to do in the future, and that's not a problem either. That your education in the liberal arts is flexible. You develop these quality skills that prepare you for anything in the future. And so we put this brochure out into the world with the title Study Everything, Do Anything on it, and it kind of had this instant and immediate response that we didn't expect in terms of the audiences we were showing it to, but also our partners across campus and within the college who found that really resonated with them, and then immediately encouraged us to kind of expand that out into other forms. And it kind of took on a life of its own as as we then both, found new ways to apply that tagline to things, but then it also guided our content development process going from there.
Yeah. So our goal, our strategic communications goal, was really just to define and reinforce the distinctive value of Notre Dame liberal arts education, and then beyond that, help students and parents and alumni be able to confidently articulate that. So that was our goal. Our goal was not develop a branding campaign, rebrand the whole college. So it just kind of worked out that way. But I think it taught us an important lesson, which is like being really focused on your mission and your message and what you need to do can guide and help you focus on everything else that you're trying to do.
Yeah, interesting. It feels very organic, but at the same time, as you said, focus too, because I was going to ask what you had to do to get buy-in across your college and among faculty and staff colleagues. So it sounds like that was more of an organic. Momentum built, and all of a sudden, everyone was behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What really helped too is then kind of how the plan extended out after we launched this kind of initial piece. So once we had the brochure out there, we were also at the same time, like I said, working on a website redesign, which we had planned on having a top level navigation piece on our website that was outcomes. And we were going to explain all this story there, but that took on the study everything, do anything theme. We were working on an overview video that was kind of the 2-minute nutshell about what the college is, and that incorporated that theme. And then, as we got further and further into it, one of the big things that really helped is we heard from partners across campus and admissions and in the first year program that parents and students were going to have questions about specific majors. We were doing a really good job of telling the college level story, but telling that department by department story was going to be something that would be really helpful too. So we went back to that outcomes data we had been working with before to see whether we had a positive story to tell about all our departments too. And we found that we did. And so then we kind of, rolled the branding out into sub-branding, where we developed one-page handouts that told the outcome story for every major in the college, that adapted that tagline into, study theology, do anything. And that really helped the departments latch onto it too, where now we found our academic departments, are using that branding in their own communications when we didn't even ask them to. They got so excited about being able to apply that tagline to their own programs that they wanted to run with it on their own.
And I think part of it too is the value of having someone sift through all that data, present it in a nice looking format, pair the hard numbers and the hard outcomes, lists with compelling testimonials, with real photos, and making it so easy for them to use. I think that helped. And I think also part of the reason we did that, like I said, is that we were hearing from the front line. So if guidance counselors and parents of 9th and 10th graders are starting to say, well, my son's really interested in art history, but we don't know what you would do with that, or my daughter wants to major in French and I'm not sure what kind of jobs would you get with that other than translator, to know that those questions are coming and that we have handy answers that are also packaged in a nice way and very compelling, helps the directors of undergraduate studies who are also on the front lines working with those students. And as those students move toward graduation and start their internship and career search, that we also have this information available yet again, as they start to wonder and worry about the career search. Here is what some of your fellow students in the past 5 years in this very major have gone on to do. So I think that actually once we had the materials in hand and they saw how valuable they were in answering those questions that were real and very pressing, that helped with the buy-in as well. And I think also just telling great stories and telling stories in a compelling way helps people understand it's not just this slick, polished branding campaign that we're pushing on them, but it's very authentic feeling.
And if you could, Kate, talk a little bit more about that and how you achieve that authenticity that is resonating, and how your storytelling efforts there are continuing, growing, evolving, and where you see that potentially going.
Well, I think that we are building on the initial stories, so still trying to find some of those big picture alumni stories where students from all majors are talking about the value of liberal arts education, so we don't get too drilled down that we forget the larger story, but then also doing individual pieces around, like Josh said too, with these newsletters, around individual majors or students who are combining majors, looking at, I want to solve a problem in the world. I'm really focused on sustainability or global health or some of the other problems where our students come in and they're really focused on that, showing how they can pull the pieces together from various departments across the liberal arts to develop a way for them to attack that problem, both as a student and then once they're out into the world. I think that's been really fun. We're still also looking at kind of what's the next step for us. So Notre Dame, we have almost a third of our arts and letters students go on after graduation to do 1 or 2 years of full-time service. So like Peace Corps or Jesuit Service Corps, Teach for America, or the ACE program at Notre Dame. And that's sort of unusual. So telling that story of what happens to those students, not just that they go and do a year or 2 of service, but what that does for their lives and their careers afterward, which has been a specific challenge here for us at Notre Dame, but it also leads to some really great stories.
Well, and one of the things too that we try to do is get as much bang for our buck out of content as we possibly can. So we use the data that we had available to us to not only help us tell our outcome story, but use that data specifically to tell stories or to find out what stories we needed to tell. And the full-time service percentage is a great example, because some parents may think it's kind of a fallback plan to go to the Peace Corps. But so then what we did is we sought out alumni who had done full-time service and then had some great job now, where maybe the service experience directly prepared them for that job, or maybe it didn't, and it just changed them and shaped their worldview in interesting ways. And so we did 3 alumni profiles that we then ran on our website and included in newsletters just as overall stories. You know, why a Spanish and anthropology major who did service is now a successful lawyer, stories like that. And then took testimonials from those stories to combine them into a 1-page handout that we give to prospective students when they come to visit days. So both you'll encounter those stories as narrative features on our website or in our newsletters, but then you're also getting those testimonials in a handout at that point where parents and students might have that question about, well, you know, that 25% who go on to service, what are they really doing after that?
Yeah, and another next step we're doing, and I think we learned this through the outcome-specific handouts that we developed, is the departments are really busy. They're doing the job of faculty who are supposed to be doing amazing research and being great teacher scholars and teaching. And so anything we can do to help them in telling this story at the department level, I think is been something we have been focused on the next thing. So now we're working on sort of a template page showing the careers that we can integrate into every single department website, rather than asking each department to come up with a way to do this on their own when they have a lot of other duties going on. So, and I think that just in terms of building buy-in, seeing someone do a really great job on this and making sure that it's easy for them to adopt at the department level has been really helpful too in building that buy-in. And I think also just making sure that we are regularly in touch with the people we were talking with at the very beginning of the process. So we're always checking in with the Career Center. We're always checking in with the employer-facing groups of that. We're always checking in with admissions and other partners across campus, whether that's Notre Dame International or Notre Dame Research, to be sure that we have our ear to the ground. We're getting those great stories, but also that we're distributing and telling them in the right way and looking for ways that we can keep articulating the liberal arts value proposition here at Notre Dame.
Well, you've done terrific work. So first and foremost, congratulations. It's super impressive. And we did tweet out a link to the website so that
great,
thank
people
you.
can go and check out some of those stories, al.nd.edu. And also a quick reminder, if you have comments or questions for Kate, for Josh, please jump in the conversation. Love to hear your thoughts. Just use the HireItLive hashtag and we'll pass that along. And I know you have touched on some of these items as you walked us through the process and the work that you've done, but in terms of overarching lessons and thinking about colleagues who may be in similar situations, what you think might apply to others in similar situations?
Yeah, I mean, one of our big takeaways is use the data that's available to you. So this report that we used to kind of start building our story around had been out there. It was featured on the Career Center website, but it's a long PDF that had a lot of data in it. And we had pointed people to that before. We tried to use just a little bit of that to tell our story, but it took a lot of work, but diving deep into that data helped us find the stories we wanted to tell. And then what we also found is when we went to the office that produced that report and said, hey, we're doing this, and we showed them what we were trying to develop and asked if there was more data that wasn't in the publicly available report, they were happy to give it to us because they were amazed that someone was finally using this information that they were compiling year after year in a really creative way. So maybe your institution doesn't have an institutional research office like that, but maybe admissions or even your individual departments, are searching LinkedIn for their alumni and have some sort of data or information on where your graduates are ending up and what they're doing. Finding who can help you gather that information is really beneficial because, maybe your overall placement data isn't exactly what you want it to be, but that information can help you point you in other directions where you may find great stories that help you get your message out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the other big takeaway for us too is that, no matter how large or small your team is, you can do branding because it is more than just about coming up with a hashtag or having a tagline that you put on all your brochures. That, content can be an effective branding tool too. And even if you are doing things just yourself and can only put out a couple of stories or a couple of iPhone videos a year, if they're tightly focused on a theme that ties to your mission, that's really beneficial to you because you can use that content in so many different ways to tell your story.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of great data out there nationally about the humanities and about outcomes of liberal arts students further on in their careers, 10 years out, being more likely to be promoted into leadership positions because they have this well-rounded skill set. So if all you can do is find national data and just find and pair it with examples that illustrate that from your own student and alumni population, that can be a really valuable tool.
That's great. And I'm sure there are listeners who are curious too about ROI and how you are measuring success and some of the key metrics that you're pointing to. What are those items that you're keeping track of and really talking about with your college leadership about here's the impact that we're having as a marketing and communications team and the work that we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's both a little too early for us to know, and it's tough for us to know from an enrollment perspective exactly what impact we might have, just because there's a unique situation at Notre Dame with this first year program and when students declare majors. But what we do know, I mean, our social media analytics continue to rise year after year. Traffic to the news stories on our website have risen significantly each of the last 3 years. And like I said before, we looked at our email newsletter analytics and realized how strong those were and have now recalibrated our strategy there to really double down on that as a key information delivery method because we know how effective it is in getting those stories in front of students and alumni. And so we've used that as a way to adjust what we're doing to try to maximize the impact of our message.
And I think it's really important with all communications work, not just to focus on hard number metrics, but also qualitative results as well. So when people who are alumni or benefactors come and talk to our dean or we hear other stories where they're reframing their own experiences in terms of that study everything, do anything narrative without us asking and, sending unsolicited notes to the dean or to other partners across campus, you can tell that the message is resonating. And I think that's really important too. And also things like, having people reach out to us and ask questions about what we're doing or how they could do the same thing, whether there are other units on campus or at events like when we presented at AMA. So you can see that there is an impact, that there are sort of qualitative stories to tell too around that data.
Well, and what's funny too is you might expect even current students to kind of roll their eyes when an institution rolls out a new tagline and new branding. But I've been amazed at the number of students we've interacted with either through stories or through other events where we're focus grouping them, and they say, no, it's really true. You can study everything and do anything. And so that type of feedback has been really helpful in without us encouraging it, soliciting these stories, hearing that message is resonating with students, and they're using it to reframe their own experiences too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And one of the things, and it sounds like you're too early, but I think in terms of higher education marketing, a unique challenge is sometimes that internally we can tire of our own messages too quickly. And
Yeah.
so I'm interested in study everything, do anything, and how you're thinking about that becoming something that endures and can span multiple years and potentially evolve and continue to be something that is a rallying point, and people get it and understand it, and it moves them to action in ways that you want.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Kate touched on this a little bit earlier, but I mean, already within just using this for a couple of years, already we've tried to find new audiences to reach with that message. So just within the last couple of months, we've been partnering with the employer-facing folks at the Career Center who have told us, well, employers sometimes want liberal arts majors, but the big consulting firms or the big financial firms will say, we want X amount of business students and X amount of economic students, and we're now trying to find a way to apply that message to convince employers that these liberal arts majors from history or American studies or philosophy have the skills they might want in a consulting firm or in a financial firm. And so we've developed, new materials that directly focus on employers to sell them on that message as well. So as we said before, it's kind of been this gradual buildup that was not something we planned on rolling out widely immediately, but we continue to try to find ways to reach new audiences with this message over time as we scale up.
Right. And that piece that Josh is just talking about, what our real goal with that was to take the language that employers are using around competencies and specific skills and surveys of employers about what specific competencies they were looking for, and then using that language, but being able to explain underneath each of those points how the Notre Dame liberal arts education in particular is specifically preparing our students to have those exact skills. And then as we started putting the piece together, when we looked at it, Study Everything, Do Anything just seemed like the natural title for that piece too. So I think it really is something that we're just starting to build up and build out now that we have gotten the first batch of huge projects done, such as our website and the view book and all the major by major outcome sheets. And sort of the next thing that we've been focusing this year is just thinking about distribution and strategic distribution. So now that we have developed all these pieces, who's seeing them? How can we get them in front of more eyeballs, both the physical pieces and also the pieces of digital content? Who can we partner with more? Is there any audiences that we're missing or avenues that we're missing? And so as we develop and work on that distribution strategy, we'll have some more outcomes to be able to measure in terms of ROI metrics over the next year or two, I would say.
Yeah, and that was an important thing to mention too. I'm glad Kate brought that up, because one of the key parts of that process was finding other partners across campus who might benefit from hearing these stories because of people they interface with, who they could pass those stories along to. So the content isn't even just reaching your direct audiences and making sure they hear that message, but it's finding people in development or admissions or first year of study, other places who are then networking with donors or with alumni or with prospective students themselves, who may not be sending them the link to the story that you wrote, but who are at a cocktail party referencing the story. Oh, I heard about this philosophy major who's doing this really interesting thing. Finding those ambassadors who can help carry your message forward into the world beyond just who we can reach through social media or e-newsletters or our website.
Well, you mentioned earlier the AMA presentation, and certainly appreciate your sharing all of this work and your experiences today. Is there a mechanism in place, or whether it's formal or informal, for internal sharing at Notre Dame for marketers in other units or other colleges? And how do you collaborate across your own institution to share good work that's happening across colleges?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have a group, an academic communicators group that is myself and then my counterparts, so whoever the marketing communications directors are for the law school and the business school and the College of Science and the College of Architecture and Notre Dame International and Notre Dame Research. We get together with the executive director of academic communications on a pretty regular basis, but we've also developed a lot of partnerships just more informally that stemmed out of that group. So identifying some areas of concern communications wise where we might have some overlap and trying to avoid duplication of efforts, whether that's talking about South Bend the cost of living and what it's like to live here, whether that's for graduate student or faculty recruitment. As you know, same thing with Bloomington. You're not in the major metropolis on a coast, but there's a lot of value in talking about that. But we don't each need to spend a ton of time trying to sell South Bend and develop all that content on our own. So working together on questions like that. And then as Josh and I talked before, so those of us involved in undergraduate recruitment, just sort of making sure that we're keeping in touch with the people on the advising front lines and in the career center and in the enrollment division as well. That's a little bit more informal in some ways. And then the larger campus, we work really closely with our media relations office because our office, we have centralized media relations, but sort of decentralized college communications and marketing, making sure that we're working really closely with our media relations partners to both share great stories and advocate to them some of the arts and letters stories that deserve media relations pitches on the higher level, but also to avoid that duplication of effort. So if we have a great piece of content, being able to repurpose it in a lot of ways instead of having people do their same thing. And then there's sort of a broader campus communicators community at Notre Dame, but they get together more infrequently. So like twice a year, we'll have big breakfast with some best practices, presentations, that kind of thing.
Well, and Kate may not mention this, but she set up 2 separate groups also within the college for communicators to collaborate. So she established a group of people whose full-time job may not be communications, but they're in departments, centers, or institutes within the college. And so she gets that group together regularly to meet, to share best practices or bring in speakers who have topics of note to share, and then a group primarily of web admins from all the departments so that they can get together and share best practices and learn tips and tricks from our office or other people across campus. And that's, both of those have been really beneficial in bringing people within the college together who have similar duties and experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen this in your role too, like just there's capacity issues within our office. We have 7 people, but there's like, 70 websites under the College of Arts and Letters umbrella for all these different departments and centers and institutes and interdisciplinary minors and things like that. So really trying to be more supportive to the people on the front lines of those websites when that is many visitors' sort of first experience of that program, and making sure that we're helping make sure that that's a good experience and kind of elevating the baseline quality for those websites by empowering the people who are on the front lines of those websites to do their work more efficiently and better, and sharing some tips and tricks and best practices that way.
Excellent. Well, we have covered a ton in 45 minutes. And as we wrap up, I want to make sure we did get to everything. Is there anything that we missed, or any other pieces of advice that you might want to share with colleagues, again, who might be in somewhat similar positions or facing some similar challenges, or just even for anyone to help them better articulate the value of liberal arts?
I think we covered a lot of it. I think kind of our big takeaway, though, is really honing in on your message helps you focus your content, but it also really helps you focus your efforts. That it knowing what the message you want to deliver and what your most effective tools to communicate that help you say yes to things, but then help you say no to things too. It helps you identify the stories you want to tell, but maybe the stories you shouldn't spend as much time telling in the same way. And so that this whole process has been really helpful and effective for our office, because we feel we're not only communicating outwardly more effectively, but it also is just helping our work in knowing that what we're doing is centered around this message, and driving those decisions has been really beneficial.
I also think don't be intimidated if you're in a situation where you don't have the budget to hire one of those big fancy branding agencies to come in, or you don't have a big budget for market research. Like, you can still try to do something on your own, and it can be really effective and authentic based on the tools that you have available and the research that you're able to do yourself. So I think that was something that we really tried to get across at AMA, and some of our other conversations about this is like, you can do this too, no matter how small your team is, no matter how small your budget is.
Well, Kate and Josh, it's been such a pleasure. Congratulations again on the outstanding work that you've done, that you've led at Notre Dame. And thanks again for sharing all your experiences and your expertise today.
Thanks so much for the invite. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Kate Gary and Josh Weinhold from the College of Arts and Letters at the University of Notre Dame. Thanks again to them. Thanks also to Jesse Arthur for handling the back channel on Twitter today. As always, a huge thank you to M. Stoner for making Higher Ed Live possible and all of these episodes of Marketing Live. Again, I'm Rob Zinkin. Happy commencement season to all of you. Thanks again for tuning in to Marketing Live on the Higher Ed Live Network.